This is an alternate history. In our reality, Jeff Bezos founded Amazon in 1994, and despite coming perilously close to bankruptcy during the dot-com crash of 2000-2001, the company survived. Amazon went on to become one of the most valuable companies in history, transforming retail, cloud computing, and logistics. Bezos became the world's richest person, with a peak net worth exceeding $200 billion. He bought the Washington Post in 2013, founded Blue Origin, and stepped down as CEO in 2021, while remaining executive chairman. Amazon employed over 1.5 million people and achieved a market capitalization exceeding $1.7 trillion. His success was total and seemingly inevitable. But what if the dominoes had fallen differently? What if Amazon's near-death experience in 1999-2000, which was very real, had actually resulted in death? What if the security breaches had been worse? What if the distribution centers had failed at exactly the wrong moment? What if Bezos made different choices in the aftermath? Choices that led him not to a comeback, but to a completely different life? What if the man who became the world's richest person instead lost everything and never got it back? What if brilliance and ambition weren't enough? What if Jeff Bezos ended up poor? This is that story. Everything that follows is fiction. The boardroom at Amazon's Seattle headquarters had never felt this cold. Jeff Bezos stared at the Bloomberg terminal, watching his company's stock price crater in real time. $8.47, $7.93, $6.21. Each tick downward was another nail in the coffin. "Jeff, the banks are calling again," his CFO whispered, her face pale. "Credit Suisse won't extend the line. They want their $150 million back, now." It was September 1999, and the dominoes were falling faster than anyone could have predicted. The dot-com bubble hadn't just burst, it had imploded with apocalyptic force. But Amazon's collapse wasn't just about the market. It was about three catastrophic mistakes that happened simultaneously, a perfect storm that not even Bezos' legendary optimism could weather. First, the distribution center disaster. The new $200 million fulfillment center in Kentucky, the one that was supposed to revolutionize logistics, had flooded during unprecedented storms. Millions of dollars in inventory destroyed. Insurance wouldn't cover half of it due to a clause about acts of God in operational facilities. The timing couldn't have been worse, just 8 weeks before the crucial holiday season. Second, the Barnes & Noble counterattack. They launched their online platform with deep-pocketed backing, slashing prices below Amazon's cost structure. But worse, they'd secured exclusive digital rights to the top 500 publishers' catalogs. Amazon's core business, books, was being strangled at the source. Third, and most devastating, the security breach. Hackers had penetrated Amazon's payment systems, compromising 3.7 million customer credit card numbers. The media firestorm was relentless. "Amazon's security nightmare," screamed the Wall Street Journal headline. Customer trust evaporated overnight. Orders dropped 73% in a week. The bankruptcy filing made front-page news. Amazon.com collapses, declared the New York Times. From Wall Street darling to dot-com disaster in 12 months. But the real nightmare came after. Bezos had personally guaranteed several of Amazon's loans. The creditors came for everything. The house in Medina, the retirement accounts, the investment portfolio, even Mackenzie's family heirlooms were seized and auctioned. When the dust settled, Jeff Bezos wasn't just broke. He was $3.2 million in debt with no assets and no income. Mackenzie filed for divorce 6 months later. She'd stood by him through the collapse, but watching him spiral into depression and rage had broken something fundamental. "You're not the man I married," she said quietly, signing the papers. That man had hope. At 46 years old, Jeff Bezos moved into a studio apartment in Renton, Washington. The rent was $650 a month, and he was late every month. The landlord, Mr. Chen, was patient at first, then less so. "Mr. Bezos," he'd say, knocking on the door at 8 a.m., "the rent was due 5 days ago." I know, I'm working on it. That's what you said last month. Jeff Bezos had tried to get consulting work. For 6 months, he'd reached out to venture capital firms, technology companies, anyone who might value his experience. The responses were brutal. Thanks for reaching out, but we're looking for someone with a proven track record of success. We admire your ambition with Amazon, but we need expertise that's, well, more current. Have you considered transitioning into a different field? The rejection from his old network was worse. People he'd worked with, people who'd called him a visionary in 1998, now wouldn't return his emails. A former Amazon VP actually crossed the street to avoid talking to him at a coffee shop. The jobs he could get were humiliating. He worked at a Kinko's for 3 months, making copies and helping people send faxes. The manager was 26 years old and called him Jeffo. He lasted at a call center for 6 weeks before being fired for attitude problems. He'd corrected a supervisor's understanding of customer data analysis and been told to stay in your lane. The debt collectors called constantly, sometimes 5-6 times a day. Bezos stopped answering the phone. Eventually, they stopped calling and moved to garnishing his wages, what little wages he had. He tried to start small businesses, a web design consultancy that landed 0 clients, a logistics software prototype that he couldn't afford to properly develop, a business plan for warehouse automation that VCs politely declined with phrases like, interesting, but not investable. The worst part wasn't the poverty. It was the invisibility. He'd been on magazine covers. He'd rung the NASDAQ bell. Now he was just another middle-aged man struggling to make rent. And the world had completely forgotten he existed. By 2004, Bezos was 50 years old and working night shifts at a warehouse. Not an Amazon warehouse, those didn't exist anymore, a regional distributor for industrial supplies in Kent, Washington. He made $14.50 an hour loading and unloading trucks. His coworkers didn't know who he was. To them, he was just Jeff, the older guy who kept to himself, who sometimes talked about systems optimization in ways that made their eyes glaze over. Once he ran into Jimmy Wright at a Safeway. Jimmy had been Amazon's VP of logistics operations during the glory days. Now he was a logistics director at Costco, doing well for himself. He'd landed on his feet. Jeff Bezos. White looked stunned. Bezos wanted to disappear. He was wearing his warehouse uniform, hadn't shaved in 3 days, looked 10 years older than he was. Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy. Man, we all wondered what happened to you. Are you doing okay? I'm fine, just working. You know how it is. White clearly didn't know what to say. Listen, if you ever need a reference or... I'm fine, Bezos said more firmly. Really, good seeing you. He left before White could say anything else. The pity in White's eyes was unbearable. You ever think about management, Jeff? His supervisor asked. I was in management, once. What happened? Bezos looked at the concrete floor. I fucked it up. The physical labor was actually therapeutic at first. It kept his mind occupied. But at 50, his body couldn't sustain it. His back started giving him problems, then his knees. He couldn't afford good health care. The warehouse job offered insurance, but the premiums and deductibles meant he just worked through the pain. He'd seen news about e-commerce sometimes. eBay was thriving. Walmart had figured out online retail. New startups were raising millions. Each story was a knife in the gut. That should have been me, he'd think. That was supposed to be me. In 2006, he had a breakdown at work. He'd been loading pallets for 11 hours straight, his back screaming, when his supervisor told him he was moving too slowly and that they'd need to discuss his performance. Something inside Bezos snapped. Do you know who I fucking am? He screamed. I built a company that was worth billions. Billions! I revolutionized e-commerce before any of you even knew what the internet was. I was on the cover of Time magazine. Security escorted him out. He was fired, of course. Sitting on the curb outside, he called his brother Mark. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. Mark, I need help. I'm not doing well. Jeff, I've offered to help you for 5 years. You always say no. You always say you're going to figure it out, but you never do." I know. I can't accept that this is my life now. I can't accept that I failed." That's your problem, Jeff. You're still living in 1999. You're still trying to be the Jeff Bezos from the magazine covers. But that person doesn't exist anymore. Until you accept that, you're going to keep suffering. The line went dead. The financial crisis of 2008 was almost funny. Bezos watched billionaires lose fortunes and felt nothing. "What's it like?" he wanted to ask them. "What's it like to fall?" But the crisis also created opportunity, even for someone like him. With unemployment skyrocketing, there were government programs for job training and placement. Bezos, swallowing every ounce of pride he had left, enrolled in a community college program. At 54, he sat in classes with people half his age, learning skills he'd once considered beneath him. But something shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was surrender. But for the first time in a decade, he stopped fighting reality. He was never going to be rich again. He was never going to run a company. He was never going to change the world. Those dreams were dead, and holding on to them was killing him. The technical writing instructor, a woman named Patricia, who'd worked in aerospace for 30 years, took an interest in him. "You write clearly," she told him after class one day. "You have a gift for explaining complex systems simply. Have you considered technical documentation work?" "I haven't considered anything in a long time," Bezos admitted. "Well, start considering. Boeing contracts out technical writing. It's steady work, decent pay. Nothing glamorous, but it's honest." He got the contract position in 2009, $32 an hour, writing instruction manuals and documentation for aircraft systems. It was mind-numbing work, but it paid the bills. For the first time in 10 years, he wasn't drowning. He moved to a slightly better apartment, 1 bedroom, $875 a month in Burien. He bought furniture from IKEA. He established a routine: work, gym, dinner, sleep. No grand visions, no revolutionary ideas, just existence. At the gym, he met Carol, a divorced nurse practitioner with 2 grown kids. She had no idea who Jeff Bezos was or what Amazon had been. To her, he was just a quiet guy who used the elliptical machine and sometimes smiled at her. "You want to get coffee sometime?" he asked one day, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. "Sure," she said. "I'm Carol." Jeff. Their relationship was refreshingly normal. No drama, no grand gestures, just 2 middle-aged people who'd both been through hell and come out the other side, looking for simple companionship. "What did you do before technical writing?" she asked on their 3rd date. "I ran a company. It failed." "That must have been hard." "It destroyed me," he said honestly. "For a long time, I thought I'd die before I'd accept being ordinary. But you know what? Ordinary isn't so bad." Carol reached across the table and took his hand. Ordinary is underrated. By 2015, Bezos had worked his way up to a staff position at Boeing. $68,000 a year, full benefits, a 401k he'd started contributing to. He was 61 years old and living a life he never could have imagined. He and Carol got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Her kids came, his brother Mark came, tears in his eyes. "I'm proud of you, Jeff," Mark said. "I know this isn't what you wanted, but you made it. You survived." They bought a modest house in Des Moines, Washington, 3 bedrooms, built in 1987, $285,000 with an FHA loan. Bezos spent weekends working on the house, fixing the deck, repainting the trim. Manual labor that once would have seemed like failure now felt meditative. At work, He was known as a solid, reliable employee. Not exceptional, not a star, just someone who showed up, did the work well, and went home. His coworkers didn't know about Amazon. The younger ones had never even heard of it. The company had been dead for 15 years, its brief moment in the sun forgotten. One day, a new intern started in his department. Fresh out of the University of Washington, 23 years old, full of energy and ideas. Mr. Bezos, I had a thought about optimizing the documentation workflow. What if we used AI to generate first drafts based on engineering specs, then had writers edit for clarity? Bezos felt something stir in his chest, that old instinct, that urge to dive deep, to optimize, to revolutionize systems. That's actually a good idea, he said carefully. You think? I could put together a proposal. Maybe we could pitch it to management together. He almost said yes, almost let himself get excited about innovation and efficiency and changing how things worked. Then he caught himself. You should pitch it yourself. You came up with it. I'm just here to keep the documentation clean and on schedule. The intern looked disappointed, but nodded. That night, Carol found him staring out the window. You okay? Yeah, just remembering who I used to be. And grateful I'm not him anymore. That guy was brilliant, but he was also miserable. He couldn't see what he had because he was always chasing what he didn't have. Carol kissed his cheek. This guy's not so bad. Bezos turned and hugged her. She was right. This guy wasn't so bad. This guy had enough. The COVID-19 pandemic was hard on everyone, but it hit older workers particularly hard. At 66, Bezos was vulnerable. Boeing, struggling with the 737 MAX crisis and the pandemic's impact on aviation, laid off 15% of its workforce. Jeff Bezos was part of that 15%. The severance was modest. The job market for 66-year-old technical writers was non-existent. He applied to hundreds of positions and got 3 interviews, all of which ended with polite rejections. Carol's nursing income kept them afloat, but they burned through savings quickly. The mortgage payments became difficult. They refinanced twice, each time pushing the problem down the road. We might need to sell the house, Carol said gently one night in 2022. Bezos looked around the living room, the furniture they'd picked out together, the photos of Carol's grandkids on the mantle, the life they'd built. Yeah, I know. They sold the house for $430,000, a profit at least, and moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Renton, the same area where Bezos had lived 20 years earlier, when everything first fell apart. He picked up gig work, DoorDash deliveries, TaskRabbit jobs. At 68 years old, he was assembling IKEA furniture for people and delivering groceries. The physical work was harder now. His back, damaged from years of warehouse labor, ached constantly. In 2024, Carol had a stroke. Mild, thank God. She recovered most of her function, but the medical bills were catastrophic. Even with insurance, they owed $47,000. They declared bankruptcy. At 70, Jeff Bezos had come full circle. Broke, in debt, struggling to make rent. But something was different this time. He wasn't angry, he wasn't bitter. He'd lived long enough to understand that life doesn't owe you anything. Not success, not redemption, not a happy ending. Some nights he'd think about that other timeline, the one where Amazon survived, where he became the richest man in the world, where his name became synonymous with innovation and capitalism itself. That Jeff Bezos probably was happy, probably fulfilled, probably felt like he'd conquered the world. This Jeff Bezos delivered groceries for $7 per delivery, plus tips. On a cold November evening in 2025, 71-year-old Jeff Bezos sat in the break room of the Fred Meyer where he worked part-time as a stalker. His shift started in 10 minutes. His knees hurt, his back hurt, everything hurt. A young employee, maybe 25, sat down across from him. "You're Jeff, right?" "That's right." "How long you been working here?" 6 months. "You ever do anything else before this?" Bezos smiled. "I ran a company once, long time ago." "Yeah? What kind of company?" "Online retail. We sold books mostly. It was called Amazon." The kid looked blank. "Never heard of it. Did it work out?" No, it didn't work out at all." "That sucks, man. But hey, at least you tried, right? Most people never even try to start a business." "Yeah," Bezos said quietly. "At least I tried." His phone buzzed. A text from Carol. "Doctor called. Results came back. Call me." He'd been having chest pains for months. Couldn't afford the tests until last week. The text made his stomach drop. "You okay?" the kid asked. "I don't know," Bezos said honestly. "I really don't know." He called Carol. The conversation was short. When it ended, he sat very still, the phone still pressed to his ear. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 to 12 months, maybe less. He should have felt terror, rage, something, but instead he felt a strange sense of relief. The struggle was almost over. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay next to Carol, listening to her breathe, thinking about the life he'd lived, the life he'd lost, the life he'd found, the life that was ending. At 3 a.m., he got up and went to the computer. He opened a blank document and started typing. Not a memoir, who would read it? Not a business book, he had no lessons to teach. Just words, thoughts, a message to no one in particular. What I Learned from Losing Everything by Jeff Bezos. I was supposed to be the richest man in the world. That was the plan. That was the trajectory. Everything pointed toward unlimited success. Then I lost it all, and I never got it back. For 25 years, I kept expecting the comeback, the moment when I'd figure it out, rebuild, prove everyone wrong. It never came. I delivered groceries, I assembled furniture, I stocked shelves. The man who was on the cover of Time magazine spent his 70s in poverty. And you know what? It's okay. Not good, not what I wanted, not how I imagined my life would end, but okay. I loved someone who loved me back. I had a warm place to sleep most nights. I had enough to eat. I had Carol's hand to hold when things got dark. The world didn't need another billionaire. It already has plenty of those. Maybe it needed one more person who tried and failed and kept going anyway. One more person who learned that your worth isn't your net worth. I'm dying now. The doctors give me less than a year. And I find myself wondering about that other version of me, the one where Amazon succeeded, the one who became everything I wanted to be. I hope he's happy. I hope he did good things with all that money and power. I hope he changed the world for the better. But I also hope he learned what I learned, that success doesn't make you whole, that having everything doesn't mean you have enough, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is just survive another day. I failed, spectacularly, completely, irreversibly, and my life still mattered. Not to history, not to business school case studies, but to Carol, to the people I worked with who needed someone to cover their shifts, to the customers who were grateful when their groceries arrived on time. Small things, invisible things, things that don't make headlines or build legacies, but they count, even if nobody's counting, especially then. He saved the document, closed the laptop, and went back to bed. Carol stirred and reached for his hand. "You okay?" she murmured. Yeah, I'm okay." And for the first time in 26 years, it was true.